Right. So this week we'll be doing cigar fights. Um, I think some of the uh, importance of this is very much aimed at earlier game players and people who are um, not necessarily at max rank. So I'm intentionally on my second account, which is rank 77. And you can see, I haven't even locked the third mythical yet, for example. So hopefully it is relatable to more people than being on my main account where it's cigar fights are just different beasts. So for those people who are maxed or closer to max on a few capos, I will be running something after this. Probably I'll stop recording before I start messing around. But just so that if anyone is interested, that will be coming up later. The first part here is mainly going over the basics. So, let's just jump in. So, um, I guess the most important part about cigars, and very helpfully on this account, is going to be illustrated rather nicely. Is well the cigars part of it. The resource that's there is really good for getting slightly ahead of the game, so that you can have when you do add a new star, you can instantly level them up, which really helps. Um, and right, so they've also added this really neat feature as of this most recent update, where you can see any gear, talents, or any awakening they've got, which is very shiny. But for the purposes of what we're looking for, the important part is the skills. There's a big thing that I see lots of people looking at, that's sort of that fight power number in the top left and top right, and some sort of looking at it and sort of like, well, I've only got 2 billion, but the enemy's got 4 billion. For me, it does depend on the account, it depends on the setup and all the rest of it, but you can get from anywhere to 3 times your fight power to 5 or even more times your fight power with a bit of effort. And that does depend on which capos you're focusing. It depends on the number of stars on your mythicals and lots of other things. So don't be disheartened if you see, like I am currently, where it's 2 versus 4. You're like, oh, I'm struggling. I feel rubbish. It doesn't. Not every single fight is fair. Sometimes their fight power will be way higher than that, and you'll find it really easy. And sometimes it'll be way lower than that, and you'll be really stuck. So there's lots of things that I would say that to not stress about. In fact, let's take all the capos off first. So one thing that's very tempting to do is just stick all the high fight power things in there. So let's just even do Gianluca. And what you will tend to find if you just stick all the high fight power things in there and just in an arbitrary lineup, that you'll struggle. So let's just fight and see what happens. For the moment, I'll leave this on 6 times speed, just because I knew that I was going to get slaughtered, so that's very well illustrated. Conveniently, I didn't accidentally win. So there's a lot of strategy if you really want to push the limits of what you can do on your account. And there's a very convenient retry feature, so we'll come on to that. But the first thing we want to do is scout the opponent and what the skills they have are, because that is very important to your positioning. So, for example, this wheels, which reduces fight power of the current enemy by 82% and skill damage by 82%, which is really, really impactful. So for my setup, where I've got 3 strong capos and then 2 weak ones, I can quite happily put someone like Azumi who has no fight power in front of that wheels, and it will make no impact to my total damage output. Azumi's there purely as a support buffer, which is the buff skill adding the fight power and the immune to stun for first 2 rounds, although I don't think they have any stuns. Shield, debuff. No, they don't have any stuns. So next one, GG without the skin, so it's just self and surrounding. So that would be a good one to stun. Black belt, and I really wish I could remember his name. I want to say Mitsukuni, but don't quote me on that. And then I really can't remember the name of the next capo, so I'm just going to skip that. And I believe that Shun, again, no skin, so no additional crit chance, but again, self buff. So there's two good options to stun here. There is GG and Shun. But with tentacles, I could only line up to either stun one or the other. I can't do both. I'm probably going to start with tentacles here and see how that goes. The big capo that I'm going to use that is also underleveled is CMV. The reason I like CMV so much, even though they are really underleveled, is not the fight power, although I guess 5% is better than nothing. It's the 20% crit hit chance, which alongside the tentacles, who's one of the stronger capos on this account. And let's just chuck in Miranda for some more context, is also the 20% crit chance. In combination with the additional crit chance from Miranda, and then the most important part is Miranda's 2.5 critical damage multiplier. So they will do a lot of damage just because of CMV boosting their crit chance, and then Miranda boosting everyone's crit chance, and then the crit damage. Similar reason that Azumi, even though she's underleveled, as in, I believe she's 4 purple stars, but doesn't really matter whether it's 4 or 5 or anything else, but is there just to add the 30%, 8% fight power. You could also use something like GG in that slot. So just shift GG up there. With the skin, it adds 20% HP, and the 31% firepower is very similar. So, in fact, for argument's sake, I'll leave GG in. And then the other capo that is really useful is Ava. Again, because on this account I've got Miranda and Ava leveled up, I would highly recommend them, even if they weren't leveled up. But I'd try to suggest running something like CMV, something like GG or Azumi or Ava as something that buffs fight power for everyone, because that matters. Because if I swap over to health, which I can now do, and it's great, you can see even though my capos, that my high-leveled capos only have 3.6 billion health, which is way lower than all of theirs. And similarly for like even my tentacles only has. Sorry, let me just click out that ability. There you go. You can see tentacles only has 5.2 billion health, so it's a lot less than theirs. Similarly with the fight power, it's a lot less. So we have to rely mainly on tentacles with the stun and swap, and also subtly very important is the 71% fight power reduction. So essentially, I'm going to reduce the bottom 3 capos to basically hitting like wet noodles. So they will be cleaned up first. I generally tend to find putting tentacles opposite anything that stuns, that does the buffs, because that is a lot of fight power to be fighting against, and they are more worth it. The damage skill isn't reduced by tentacles nerf, so even though I'm hitting 2 of them, it's just because I want to hit Shun more, and I want to be able to place CMV next to tentacles, and I explicitly want someone just to absorb the tentacles nerf that doesn't need it. The other option I could do is I could put Tents up here and stun the wheels as well, because if I disable his nerf skill for ever triggering, he's just a body that does damage, doesn't have any skill. Essentially, same with GG. I could shuffle the position around like that. There's lots of options, and I don't have any great confidence in me winning this first fight. In fact, you can see my fight power's actually gone down, and hopefully I won't win, and there's a good reason for that. It's going to be pretty close. Oh, I'm going to win comfortably. Okay, never mind. So, hopefully I'll lose one soon then. You could see the difference, at least, from that first fight where I went very comfortably lost to that fight, which actually in the end wasn't that close, because the only 2 capo to dies were the underleveled ones. So, the other useful feature here, and I will use for argument's sake, is the instant cigars, which is that top right. You get a free one once per day, which does 10 fights automatically. I would tactically use this to collect cigar missions and the street missions. Even if you know you're going to lose, you still get, in my case, 4.9999 HH, so lots of cigars for me. So it's always worth pushing that button for the sake of pushing it. It also counts once towards your contribution points. So I like this button. Now, conveniently for me, I'd intentionally set it up so that I could be able to push some to illustrate some points. So I was kind of expecting that. But you can see here, this is one of the reasons to push cigar fights, because I got 3 blue keys. So I believe it's every second or third fight. I can't ever remember the detail now. But every so often there is a boss fight which gives you a blue key in addition to cigars, as well as increasing your cigars per minute. So it's always worth spending some time when you have a spare minute tinkering and trying to push some cigar fights. Not to stress about it, but always worth doing. So similarly, I'm now going to claim these extra cigars. You also notice the max number of cigars you can have stored up here is 28.5 hours, because I've only got 57 capos out of the 58. Normally it's 29, because you can have 58 capos, and it illustrates that 1 capo equals 0.5 hours idle time. Again, use that claim tactically to be able to complete street missions like I just did, but I'm saving them for tomorrow's CP, so I'm not collecting those missions. Then, I have all 3 of my 3 main capos that need levelling up. So I am going to dump everything in preference into my Gianluca, because it's then levelling up tentacles. And then anything that's left over, again, because it's levelling up the Tomo, I'm going to dump it into Miranda. The other thing you can do between cigar fights is double check gear. So that cowboy ring, because it's PvP and GVG only, is actually technically worse, and I could re-equip it. Similarly with the wild rag, I could re-equip it, but I can't be bothered to do that for the purposes of this, because it takes time and effort. In fact, even the cowboy vest is only PvP and GVG, so all of those items are slightly worse. And I could level up the gear, but again, I'm saving it to level up other gear. But it's worth, if you're struggling with a cigar fight, checking your gear and going, let's see if anyone has actually any gear that I can level up easily. There you go, Tomo. So it's only all at 120, so I can push that to slightly higher, 125. Which, if I use Tomo, could be helpful. Similarly with Miranda. It's also 120, so I can probably go and get some more skulls for that. So, where do we go and get some more skulls? We go into the gang shop, and I haven't bought them this today. Excellent. So I'm going to go buy some stones, so I can go level up Miranda gear. And how much of a difference does this really make? So I'm at 3.5 billion health and 409 million fight power. It makes very little difference because I can only do a couple of levels. But believe me, if you've got... In fact, let me just remove the gear for better illustration. So it makes a couple of million fight power difference and a tiny amount of HP difference. Well, I'm amazed it's that small. But as you level up, that gear becomes more and more impactful. And the Deluxe gear, if you do happen to have any, can offer some really good benefits. So the revolver for Miranda, adding 15% fight power is quite useful. But I won't focus too much on that, because generally you want to save buying Deluxe gear for later on, although that revolver is a good one to have. And the other thing that's worth checking, and again intentionally I haven't done this, so it wouldn't surprise me if I have got something saved to put in, but I haven't, is double checking your talents. Now it's not just checking the talents you've got equipped, but also using that cog icon to check what you've actually got equipped for cigar fights, which is that top one. So I've got combat set 2 equipped. Don't remember what's in combat set 2. Dodge chance, good choice. I'll double check Miranda. Combat set 3, which is yet more dodge chance. And you'll see a common theme here, which I've set up everyone to be set 1 dodge chance. So I tend to suggest that there's lots of dodge chance, mostly because it synergizes with Ava and the counter attacks, which do 95% in my case, but even like a 2 purple star Ava still has like a 90% fight power counter attack, which is quite impactful. And the fact that you've got the 20 dodge from here means you're pushing 50-60% dodge chance, which is really good for these fights, and I will do the next fight a little slower so we can watch that. So here we got a boss fight, and we can see there's 1 blue key extra as a bonus reward. So, first thing to do, when my game loads, open up that hourglass, double check their skills. So we've got tentacles. We got wheels again with that nerf skill. We have damage skill, targets lowest HP. So that's the other advantage of CMV. They will go and absorb hits like that, even though they've got 540. Wait, how much HP do they have? Even though they've only got 7 million HP, they can absorb a 10 billion hit because of their Death Defy passive. And losing CMV once the combat started really isn't a problem. The Dante hitting all enemies means what I'm going to try and do, and it's much easier said than done, but what I'm going to try and do is get it so Dante is the last one to live, because if you kill the capo like Dante's on death skill triggers and kills all of your capos, you still win. So you want to try and orchestrate it so that he's the last one to live, which, as I say, is a lot easier said than done. So what I will do this time, in fact I'll leave it on this screen, is I will shuffle Ava, even though I don't really want Ava being debuffed by wheels, but because tentacles will swap Dante down to the last slot, in the meantime stunning Eugenio and I want to say that's Kate, but again, names of capos escape me, that both have buff skills, so avoiding both those buff skills is really useful anyway, and shoving that Dante down to the bottom. So again, you can see my fight power 1.46 billion versus 5.78 is somewhere between 3 and 5 times, nearer the 5 times, and my lineup, whilst I've shuffled some space around, hasn't really changed significantly. You can do lots of shuffling, so Gianluca's can be situationally good, Tomo to be able to one-shot things. Let's do HP again. Let's dump Tomo in for a second. So I can see mine does 3.8 billion, which is nothing compared to the amount of HP they have on theirs, so it's a bit of a... it doesn't do enough for me. That the all mileage may vary on Tomo, but personally that's why I don't use Tomo in generally. Same with, let's just chuck in Gianluca for a second. So his second skill doing 5 is half their HP, so is actually a decent chunk of everyone's HP, so Gianluca probably could do a decent amount of work here, because his first damage skill will pretty much one-shot anyone, and then the second skill will wipe out half the HP on everyone, so is not a bad choice. And let's think in another interesting sub-option, so just in case I don't get the opportunity to show it off, you can use things like Chiu's stun, because it increases the damage they take by 60% as well as stunning them. Because you're the attacker, you'll stun before their buff skill goes off. And similarly, you can use your own wheels. Again, on this account, they're between 2 purple stars and 4 purple stars, so they're very low level, but their skills are still very effective. So 60% instead of theirs is 80%, but 60% is still a lot. So the other option I could do is I could do something like wheels in the middle to nerf that Dante, so that when it does trigger, instead of doing 6 billion, it will do... maths whilst I'm trying to talk is difficult. 60% less of that. But again, for argument's sake, I'm going to do it this way round, just to see how it goes. I was using GG. And let's go. So the start of the fight always looks really dodgy, and you could see how much damage that Dante did. And then let's just keep going and see if I can find a better example. So I'll start trying to go a little bit quicker now so I can get onto a better example. But generally speaking, if you fail, you can try again. Quickly looking through this. So the healing capos are quite high priority. So I'm going to shuffle it around so that I can stun them and put someone high damage opposite them. In fact, I'm going to leave tents down there. In fact, I'm just going to leave Ava opposite them because they do the high damage. Not going to shuffle anything else. No, I'll just leave it as that. It's going to be a little bit closer. So that was a much better example of why CMV and Tentacles is the big scaling option there, is because Tentacles was dropped very low, basically 1 HP, because the CMV pass buff left him not being able to die at 1 HP, and then his healings trigger, which I didn't go over, which I will quickly now. When Miguel's HP is less than 50%, it will heal all teammates for lots of HP per round for 3 rounds.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's alright. So I want to swap things around a little bit. Tia Maria is also an interesting one because they revive, and because they are highly overleveled, they come back with actually 100% HP, so they're quite an interesting one to come up against. There isn't really a good way of dealing with them other than doing lots of damage. So I don't particularly want to stun them in preference. So I am going to shuffle everyone this way. I do want to stun that Eugenio though, so that way. So then I'm going to have CMV next to... dropped him. I'm going to have CMV next to Tentacles always, but then it's fine being up against Miranda as the other one that's buffed rather than Miranda. Ava even rather than Miranda, because it's still one of my stronger capos, so that's fine. I think that will be okay. So the other one that I desperately wanted to stun was this Eugenio, because adding lifesteal can make life really difficult. All looks good. Yeah, plenty of HP. So you can see that res does a lot of work, especially when they have the skin version and they res surrounded allies. It can get very fun fighting against Tia Maria. And this is the point I'll start inviting people to start asking questions, because I'm going to start flying through some fights until I start losing. So there's 2 healing capos here, so I probably want to fight everything with the high fight power down here. Let's try that. And of course you can use the skip button, but what I'm doing, whilst I'm not actually actively commentating on it, is I'm trying to pay attention to things that I can pick up on that could potentially be improved. It's difficult to say exactly what you can spot that go, oh, that didn't work as planned. But it's normally things like healing capos doing a lot of work, or you didn't spot that they had a Chiyu which was stunning something important that you didn't realise, but because my tentacles are stunning theirs, it doesn't actually trigger. But sometimes you miss something when you're doing it, and you'll end up losing, and then you'll want to shuffle around. So again, it's getting a little bit close now, so I'm just going to keep going, and I'll eventually come up and start losing, hopefully soon. Shouldn't take too long. Other things I can go over. Shuffle up. So I want... sorry, so I noticed they've got Pedro with the death, so I've put the weak cap opposite them, and I'll move Tentacles up here. Should do good. Yeah, the things you can see that are really triggering, and there you go, Tentacles surviving on 1 HP. I'm trying to think other things that you want to look out for during the fights, like that Tentacle surviving on 1 HP. It was fine because their Pedro died last, so even if he had died then, it wouldn't have mattered. I'd have still won. It's worth paying attention to things like skins where they get an additional skill. So you can see Chew has a 50% chance to stun everyone. But because I can then run Azumi, who then protects everyone from stun for 2 rounds, if I can drop Chew below 50% health in the first 2 rounds, I can trigger the stun and ignore it, because I'll be immune to it. So let's try and make that a thing. Let's put that way round. Let's drag Tents down here. No, I don't want to drag Tents all the way down here. Let's move him up one. Let's move CMV up there, Miranda up there. And then, so because I still want to stun that Eugenio, but I've then got a strong capo opposite the Chew trying to get them to trigger their stun within the first 2 rounds, which isn't going to work out. Oh, that was very lucky. So the main things that I, again, appreciate that it goes fast very quickly on 6 times speed. But the main thing that saved me there was dodge chance, because you could see lots of Ava counter attacks flying across the screen, which means not only are you dodging, but you're doing that 90 whatever percent of skill fight power damage as a counter attack, 95%. Okay, anything else that's exciting here? So I want to move zoom me up there. All looks good. Yeah, let's go. Oh, I should have mentioned, I wish I could remember her name, but she has the counter attack on just the single capo, the on death skill. But it does a lot of single target damage, so that's worth looking out for. Let's just quickly think. There's other capos that are good. Omega can do some good work because of the resurrections. Your own Eugenio for the lifesteal. Let me actually stick them in so you can know who I'm talking about. So Omega, who has Revive, and they finally changed it to a light blue colour to be a Revive, which was a nice change. And Eugenio, again, 20% lifesteal, even though he's only 2 purple stars, or 3 purple stars, can add a lot of value. Let's go back to Gigi, because they've got no stuns. Let's go back to that. Let's put Ava back in.
And pride for Brighton and Old Trafford as they beat Manchester United on their home turf.
And I finally lost one. Yay. So the thing I'm going to do this time round is pay a little bit more attention, but I'm not going to change any of my lineup. So because I came so close to winning, it's likely that I will win. But what I will do is I'll reduce the speed down to ×2 so I can see what's going on. So it looks to be going slightly better already. Looks to be going a lot better already. Oh, so the big thing that's triggering, that's causing a mess of my lineup is that on death skill, but I won this time round. So if I did want to change something up there, I'd swap whoever was opposite Pedro down to being the weak capo, so I could trigger that on death skill last and therefore not have to worry about it. So there are things you can do like that to
Everyone makes sure
help it.
their light.
Sorry, say that again?
And everyone makes sure they're muted.
Sorry, Kat, I didn't catch that.
So they said not everyone's muted.
Yeah, it was someone joined. I muted them so that you didn't hear the background noise anymore. So I apologise, Tellboy, but you're now on mute because you joined without muting.
Yeah, all good now.
Yep, cool. So this lineup's a bit of a weird one because it's got lots of healing capos. This could be more exciting of actually needing to reposition. But again, for argument's sake, I'm just going to run a straight up lineup. Is there anything particularly exciting that I want to stun? I'm already stunning the GG. I am going to swap my GG opposite their wheels to get nerfed. And I'm going to swap it back to 6 times speed, because nobody needs to watch everything in 2 times speed when you have the option to put it on 6 times. There you go, it's quite comfortable. Hopefully I'll eventually get to a point where I start losing and I can start changing some lineups and it'll make a big difference. Doesn't normally take too long. The other thing you can do when you're pushing like this is keep coming back to the, so again, on death skill, so I'll swap the weak capo opposite them. The other thing you can keep doing is, because I'm gaining cigars whilst I'm doing this fight, I could be pumping those cigars back into capos to improve their strength. So when you start becoming on a roll of doing these and getting lots of cigars accumulated, you can then do lots of more cigar fights because you're improving your capos. So it's a nice self-fulfilling, you get stronger, and as you get stronger you can do more, and as you can do more you can go further type thing. There is also an element of I'm going to potentially just start skipping some of these fights to get on with it, just so I can get to the point where I'm properly stuck. In fact, I might just do that, unless anyone's going to greatly object. Generally speaking, Tentacles dead center is the blindly good option, because then you know he's stunning 3. They tend to put the boss in the center. I think the boss is always center. So again, I left them down at 1 capo left, so I'm just blindly going to fight and retry again and skip, and then I won. So there's quite a few times where you'll lose a fight, but it'll be quite close. So like there, where there was a 1 capo left on low HP, where if you just run it a couple of times, because of the dodge chance, because of the crit chance, the RNG can happen, and you can win a fight that you would have previously lost. So I promise I will eventually get to a point where I can start losing, and I actually have to change things up. But that does cover the basics of cigar fights generally. CMV is a big capo to use, especially with the skin. Miranda, now that Miranda's skin out, is a good one to purchase to give you it will double the base crit chance on her. Ooh, finally one that I might lose. Consistently, I might have to change some stuff up. Excellent. So what can I change up here? I can move GG to be opposite their wheels. That might even be enough to win now. No, give it another go. There we go, finally. So, the big thing that I can see is there's that Pedro who's doing 7 billion damage. My HP pool is not 7 billion, so it's going to one-shot everything. So I really want that Pedro to die last. How am I going to orchestrate that? Because my lineup is pretty well set up to move him across opposite CMV, which should die pretty close to the end. Good question. Might be difficult. Because I'll somehow also need to still kill that wheels offer quickly enough. Let's do something like that and see if that works any better. I'll also start slowing it down so I've got better attention to see what's going on. It's going to be pretty close. His heal skill triggers at the very last second, healing only him, and the one shot. Cool, this might be really difficult. So this is where I was trying to get to, which is you get to a point where it is very difficult. I'm now trying to do 1.4 times 5 versus 6.6 is again closer to that 5 times end. But you can keep trying to shuffle things, so I could potentially move Tents up a spot and try and not worry about the stun from wheels. I could run it that way round. Whilst I've said you can try and leave their Pedro or Dante to last to kill, the other option is trying to nuke them down quickly enough that when their damage skill that one-shots everyone triggers, that it counters the CMV on-death skill, so that they get left on 1 HP, and then the Tentacles heal triggers afterwards. So I could win this with dodges, but it's very unlikely. You could try that way round, try and do it that way. This is also where you can start. That is a very weird swap. I have no idea what went on there. That looked very weird. There you go. That's what I was talking about. So since I nuked their Pedro down, even though he dropped everyone to 1 HP and triggered the CMV save buff, that you then have Tentacles heal everyone up. Although since they had enough skill damage capos left alive, it was too much. This is where you can also start trying to sub in other capos, so you can sub in things like Chiu. I could try something like Gianluca to see if that works any better. But the answer generally is experiment with lots of different things, and some things will work better than others, some things will surprise you. Like this is surprisingly how close that was compared to the other times. It's probably the best attempt yet. I could even go back to GG. And there's a chance something that you wouldn't necessarily expect to work will work. I always think it's a good idea to start experimenting and trying things out and not getting frustrated. And as I mentioned earlier, the other thing I can do is swap over to back to add more cigars in. The thing I did notice was their healing capo seemed to keep everyone alive forever. And that the game has slightly glitched and their lineup is the wrong way round. Because Wheels is in the centre. Hold on, let me exit out and go back in. There you go, it fixed itself. Wheels is at the top and their healing capo's in the centre. So let's try dropping something that does lots of damage in the centre. And let's go back to tents. Let's try that way round and that way round. See if that works any better. But let's move that way. Cool. So skill triggered cruises damage skill early, but it does mean the Pedro is going to likely one-shot everyone. Tent survived and then died one round afterwards. So you can see there is this sort of like ceiling that you hit that even if you try lots of different things that you will keep failing. But I've gone up a fair number of levels just in this video. Voice call, same difference. And there will be a point where you just can't get past without changing up gear, talents, adding stars to capo, using those cigars you've just earned to level some stuff up. It is worth experimenting. It is worth trying different things. It's worth waiting for more cigars to passively come in through income. So I think I've almost doubled my income just by doing this push now. So there's lots of things you can do. I think I am probably stuck at this point, minus spending lots of time experimenting with different options. But again, I think that illustrates my point as far as what's useful and the idea that you can actually get, I use the word stuck, you can get to a point where you need to wait for something else to be upgraded to get past it. But that doesn't mean I couldn't get past it, it would just take a lot of time. And again, for argument's sake, there's always a point where you go, you know what, that's as far as I want to push it for today. So, has anyone got any questions? Take a drink. And feel free to type if you don't want to talk. That's not a problem. Cool. Let me stop my recording.